Well, hello from the garden. It is November. I'm not sure that I'll have much to show next month, but I've got quite a few things that I want to talk about today. I've been doing the monthly garden tours, so I was going to do one more and show you some of the last shutdown things that I'm going to be doing for the garden. Um, I do have some fall things going, but there's some things that I want to do for soil amendments in a couple, well, in one of the beds. I'm also going to pull some things out today. If I have to be wearing shoes in the garden, I'm just grumpy about it. It is pretty darn cold out here, so I'm going to try and do this kind of quickly while also showing you a lot of things. So I'm going to venture away from the typical garden tour that I would usually do every month because things haven't changed a whole lot yet. But I do want to show you how things look now that it is into November. So this has been it's been a great first year in these raised beds as a collective. And I have big plans for next year, of course. So let's do some things to kind of wrap up the garden for the year. Sad face. So because I said we're wrapping things up for the year, I want to start in my raised bed here for my herbs. Now I have seen some people rip up their basil, but I don't want to do that. I have gotten mixed information online about whether or not my basil will live through the winter or not. And so I figured the best way to figure that out was to just see if it lives. What I do want to do today is pull some things out, specifically my marigolds. I'm actually going to pull them out and hang them on the fence back here with the intention being that I want them to dry out so I can use the seeds for next year. So now this is the first year I've ever grown this variety. And I can tell they're very tired. The leaves are turning darker. The flowers are, while still producing, it's just done. I don't need a thousand seeds of these. And this one, I am not going to leave in that spot. This variety became way too big for my liking. And they eventually split because they got so big because the plant itself actually wanted to lean over. And if you see all these nodes here, had I allowed this plant to actually lean over like it wanted to, you can kind of see a good example here. You can see a good example here of this, that if any of these portions of the plant were to have touched dirt, it would have rooted and begun to grow more. So these I intend to actually grow in an entirely different place. Not only did these want to spread out quite a bit, but they're also a monstrosity, if you will. So I want to put them in a place that's going to have more space. Look at this thing. This is one plant, one seedling. I'm pretty proud of this. I grew this from seed, which is something I used to think I couldn't do. Every one of these flowers will be a seed head. So I have mentioned in the past that I'll give folks seeds. I will. I have loads of them. I do intend on growing marigolds quite a bit more next year. So I'll use a lot of seeds. I'll do this about, I don't know, 40 times next year. The root systems on these are intense. They spread all the way across the bed, and these would keep growing. It's chilly out here and my fingers are cold, but this is still trying to take off. So these marigolds are an awesome variety. These are called snowball because, of course, the flowers look like snowballs. Now I was talking about my basil and whether or not it could live out here, and it's got a number of leaves hanging out on the ground next to it. So it looks as though it's going to lose a lot of its leaves, so I'm actually going to harvest quite a bit of this. A lot of herbs tend to spread, okay? So my yarrow is doing just that, I see. But I wanted to talk about this oregano here. So I kind of did this without thinking about demonstrating, and so this is what it is. But oregano tends to want to spread out because it is part of the mint family. So as these leaves tend to get longer, they lay down, they generate more roots, it spreads out. So whenever I harvest this, I actually try to go around the edges and pull all the reachers up, and then I trim what I've called the reachers, the guys that are spreading out. And that kind of keeps this from getting too out of hand. So there's also these woody bits that pop up. I just try to clean it up a bit while I'm out here. So I want this guy to not spread out too far. My intention next year is to place marigolds like that red one on all four corners here. So I need this to not spread all the way here because I'd like for a marigold to go right here. I like these smaller variety marigolds, and I'm going to do one on each corner. So I'm going to actually leave that one and see if he will overwinter. I don't know that he will, but you know, it's worth a try. Something interesting is this big old chunky yarrow here. I actually stole a piece of this out of my parents' front yard in the spring. This looks like an established plant that's been here for years, but it's a baby. I stole him last year. So something interesting is to see how this grows differently as the weather has changed. So when it was summertime, this thing was super tall and not as thick and fluffy. And now that things have started to cool down, this guy is just a fluff monster. Um, and it's actually fun to pet. That's why I keep, messing with it. All right, so here we are at the back of my garden, and this is where a lot of my projects are about to transpire. Um, First being, I'm about to yank up all these carrots. Okay, so these carrots, I did not thin them as well as I should have, meaning that some of these are just absolutely disappointingly tiny. But some of them are good sized, and this is exciting for me because I have never ever grown carrots. And these are a super cool variety. I'll pull them up and get some good examples for us here. So, carrots. The problem here is that some of them are awesome sized, which is a big deal. I've never grown carrots before in my life. Some of them are also not. The problem here lies in the fact that I did not appropriately thin these. I had read that I needed to thin them, but for some reason I just couldn't bring myself to do it. They were growing. I liked it. So these are a kaleidoscope variety. So I don't have a lot of purples. Here's a purple. This one's cool, isn't it? I love it. Lots of oranges, yellows, purples, because they are a kaleidoscope variety, meaning, lots of colors. So, first ever harvest of carrots. Um, I'm super pleased with it. And it took me a long time to be able to harvest these because I had swallowtail butterflies chewing on my greens. But I'm going to bring this inside and I'm going to make a butternut squash soup this week that I'm super excited about. So, carrots. So, in this bed, I have some things still going. Those peas were direct sown peas that I did a couple months ago, and they are doing nicely climbing up the trellis. Um, I have some brassica varieties as seedlings over on that end, and I'm just going to leave this portion here. I may throw some new carrot starts there, but I'm okay with things remaining empty for a bit. This bed here, which you can't really see at the moment, is my tomato graveyard. So we are actually about to rip these guys out. I have already been over here yesterday and I pulled all my little clips off these because I had 1,000 clips, it seemed, on these tomatoes to get them to climb up these trellises. And these trellises are just not it. They're not it. So I've got to get me some new trellises before next summer or next spring. I have some plans in place for that though. But I'm pulling these tomato plants out. Things have started to potentially frost at night. They've stopped growing. They need heat. They're not getting heat. So I had some science experiments here in an attempt to get these trellises to not fall all the way over. So this is my black Krim variety tomato. He was a super big guy. I just loved him this year. Saved seeds from it. In fact, he will be back next year 100%. So I am just doing my best to pull this off this trellis here. And I had to tie him up because he was a menace. Okay, so it's always interesting to me just how crazy these grow. I mean, this is like so big. So it's almost like my brain can never really wrap my head around the fact that this is going to be a monstrosity. I seem to never quite expect the size to be what it ends up being. So just pulling all my clippies off. And I actually love these clips. I'm like, hang on, let's talk about these a moment, shall we? I got these off Amazon. You can also get them at the Dollar Tree. And they're very easy to add onto something, take off of something. Not a big deal. I love them. They've been a lifesaver for all my plants that trail. All of them. They're on my peas right now. These trellises are just awful. They would be great for something small, but a monstrosity of a tomato is just, it can't. So I'm not real worried about being nice to these as I pull them out because they honestly frustrated me this year. Something about these clippies though, is that when you go start yanking them off of things, they kind of struggle a little bit. So I want to show you how I'm about to fix this guy. So I got a little hasty. It wasn't exactly nice to it. So you kind of get these grooves to match back up. And then this ring essentially goes around it to give it an appropriate springage. And there's little dents that goes into, and boom. So you do not compost these tomatoes, or at least I will not be, because these tomatoes have developed blight. So this is why they're not doing great. The soil has just gotten so moist with all the fall rain that they're just done for. So these go in the trash can, not the compost. So I'll give you an update on my worm bin while we're here. I have been putting kitchen scraps in here. I'd actually slowed down quite a bit on the kitchen scraps I was throwing in here simply for the fact that I could not get to this darn thing because my tomato plant was such a monstrosity over top of it. I had planted my tomato plant on top of it for a reason though, because I wanted it to provide shade to this bin. This is a lot of sun right here, and I wanted there to be shade on the bin so that the worms within it didn't get too hot. So my worms actually venture out of these holes that are in here, and they'll go out into this bed. They could potentially go into the dirt and just disappear forever, but so long as you keep good foods in here, they won't disappear. They'll come back, they'll multiply. Honestly, the population of worms in this bed is pretty intense. Trust me. I see them in here all the time. So I have never put dirt in this worm bin. This is what's cool, is that I've taken the stuff out of this worm bin a number of times, filled flower pots and things with it. But this thing is about half full, if not more than that. And this is essentially worm castings. It's a very good, healthy, very dark dirt. So this is not, I've never put dirt in here myself. This is simply broken down food scraps, worm castings, some eggshells that you can see. Beautiful, beautiful soil. I want to do soil amendments on this whole bed. I very much love my tomatoes, and so I want to give them really the best chance they have. So I'm actually going to get this soil tested, I think, and I'm going to take the soil out of here, disperse it through there before I do my soil testing. That way it's got some very good examples of how things are looking. So now that I've yammered on about my worm bin, which is, I mean, it's cool. I got this from Vigo Garden. I've made some videos about it before, but to see that it's almost filled up with, if I hadn't have been stealing stuff out of this for my potted plants, this dirt would be full. Whenever I filled up these garden beds this year, I got like a dump truck full of dirt. And I actually plan on doing that again. These beds actually aren't as full as I would like them. I want to add some more compost to them because they also have settled down a little bit. So in the springtime, not only am I going to compost my beds again, but I'm also going to compost by the tree because I'm actually going to try to grow some things under the tree. Now, before I pull out these Sweet 100s, which is, I have forgotten which variety, if it's determinate or indeterminate, means that they grow up, 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 up forever. But this trellis has been really interesting for these tomatoes because they grew up and then they started to bend down. See if I can give you a good example of this. Here's one that grew all the way up and then started to then trail back down the trellis as it got tall. So these have gotten really big. I actually want bigger trellises next year. And I'm going to see if I can't get my brother to help me build those. But I want to have him weld them. My brother's a welder fabricator. And so I'm going to have him build me some nice big fancy tomato trellises. I'm also going to have them build, I want new archways because this archway is just rickety. So again, these tomatoes have blight on them. I'm seeing it all over the leaves. So they've got to go. And I'm going to put them in the trash. We do not save blighted tomato plants. This is an old pepper plant here that never got enough sunlight to grow into anything fun. I didn't get a single stinking pepper this year. You win some, you lose some, right? There is a variety of radishes hanging out in a row back there. I'll leave them. I also have peas growing right here. I did a row of those, but a little boy came out here with a toy shovel and was attempting to assist. I am going to leave this nasturtium baby right here. I just want to see how far he goes. And then this is an eggplant here. He's still kind of going, but I'm ripping everybody out just because I really want to do some soil amendments. So if it's a mature plant that's been here for a while, I want to pull it out. Minus the nasturtium. I like him. This is my first year ever growing nasturtium. So I'd like to see how long it lasts. So yeah, I don't know if you can see, but these are my radishes. They have gotten abused a little bit with all the excitement. But these radishes were a direct sow, and they honestly look a little diseased. I don't know what's going on with those. I've never grown those either. We're largely flying by the seat of our pants most of the time here, guys. All right, it's very odd to see this bed empty. Very odd. But it also feels a little bit like a clean slate. I don't completely hate it. This is a fun experiment. These peas were direct sown the same time as those peas. However, these peas have had unlimited sun, no shade, well, minus the house. These peas had to compete with tomatoes. I'm about to see if anybody's tall enough to clip to the trellis. These tend to just end up being a pile of monstrosity while they grow. See, this one's long enough. Never would have known that. So I just kind of tell these that there's something here for them to grab onto. And then it's almost as if once they are familiar with the fact that there's something here to climb, they kind of go buck wild. The colors just really aren't done any justice. I very much love to see the leaves falling into the garden and all the yellows and oranges. I love fall. I love all the colors that we see. It is pretty sad to see such an empty garden, but I don't know. I kind of love it. I love a clean slate. So I'm going to turn you around here in just a second because I want to talk about where I'm standing. Last spring, the majority of these beds were built, which was super exciting, right? I absolutely loved the journey. So this year, and you can kind of see where I've hung up my marigolds. Isn't that cool? That's why I wanted this style of fence so I could hang things up to dry. So next year, I plan to do things a bit differently. I intend on getting better trellising, archways especially. I want to put an archway over this gate as well. So there will be archway. There's a protrusion in the middle bed for the herbs. There's a tall trellis there. I want the trellises to be smaller on the outside beds. Archway, archway, and then archway here. The reason for that is that I plan to plant blueberries in a row here. Now, the research that I've been doing says that you have to do 2 different varieties in order for them to do well. So I'm going to do a dwarf variety, a larger variety, dwarf variety, 3 on each side of the gate. Okay. Then the trellis that I'm actually going to place over the gate, or potentially directly in front of the gate to where you walk. There's archway, then gate, then backyard. Hopefully you're following me here. I want to grow grapes. I have passion fruit up there. I have elderberries in pots. I have strawberries. I had so many vegetables, but I didn't have a whole lot of fruit. So I want to do grapes, and I think I may add a secondary fruit as well. Grapes and maybe, I don't know, something else that trails. That's something that I intend to look into. Um, Also, in my projects for next year, I plan to get chickens. I don't need a million chickens. I want to get a smaller coop that I can put just inside this gate, potentially right behind me in this corner here of the yard. I'm thinking four chickens maybe. I have never touched a live chicken in my life, okay? And I have some. I don't love chickens. I'm not gonna say I'm scared of them, but like there's just something weird about their bone being exposed on their face as a beak, and like they're flighty. It's gonna be a learning curve, but I very much have always wanted chickens. There's a lot of things in my life, this garden included, that I've always wanted to do these things, and I've always had somebody that told me I couldn't. And there's nobody here to tell me no. It's purely my responsibility, and so I'm excited about it. I'm gonna try and get 4 chickens, a small coop, let them kind of free range in the backyard a bit. So those are going to be my projects for the spring. I'm of course going to do different plants, and that's exciting. I'm going to do more in the tree bed, and we'll go up and talk about the tree bed here in just a minute. I'm going to do chickens, and then we're going to do some rows here. So I'm going to do kind of a stone border, dirt, of course, in it, and then do a bit of a bed here, and then again the trellis with the grapes and a to be determined secondary fruit. So that's here. These are going to dry for a while here, which I think is pretty cool. It looks kind of neat there for me. So That's the garden gate. And we intentionally left some space here so that we would one day be able to place something there. I say we, I mean my brothers. So I'm super excited about that. Peas are going. Let's go look at these front beds on our way up to the tree. Okay, so front garden beds, real quick before we turn around. I have my passion fruit growing up this trellis here, and I'm going to have to cut him off because I'm doing a new archway. I'm going to build a new archway there that's wood instead, more sturdy. So I'm going to have to cut him off, but we're letting the peas grow up. I'll cut that guy back in the spring whenever I build my new archways. I have several different lettuce varieties in this bed, as well as that one too. There's an arugula, but it's just they're not happy. It's like something's chewing on them. I have no idea what though. I suppose it could be an animal because it's definitely not a bug. So if anyone is in like the cusp of 7B, which is kind of where I'm at. I am not doing great with the lettuces, and I never have. I've always thought it would be super cool to have some awesome lettuces. Maybe that's something that I'll try again in the spring, but for fall, they're not loving me. I'm just kind of letting them go. I'm not going to yank nobody up. We'll see what they do. Okay. So, peas, lettuce varieties. My strawberries are still growing strong. I've just been letting them go. Um, my nasturtium has picked way up again now that it's cooler out. And then, yeah, my passion fruit, which will get cut off in the spring. So let's turn around for a second. Okay. So this is around my very big water maple. This water maple has been here longer than my house has. I have no idea how old he is, but it's a very big, very mature tree. And honestly, it's what really caught my eye on this house. Now, there is very clearly been a flower bed around this tree for a long time because even though my house is here, my house is brand new, there was a house here before it, and whoever lived here before me also liked plants, which is exciting. So I have hyacinths, tulips, irises, and daffodils that all come up in this bed. And when those started to pop up and I started to pay attention to these guys, is really how I chose where to place my borders. Also, that is that is a peony. So there's a lot of things that have already been in this bed. I have pulled some irises from like the middle of the backyard and put them in here. So I did get a flower of an iris this year, which I was so excited about. I've got my hyacinths and my daffodils and things like that popping up, but those are all kind of appearing at the exterior border of this big bed. And there's loads of space in the middle that I plan to fill in. So I'm actually thinking about trying to throw some vegetables in there. I was thinking about maybe throwing a squash or a pumpkin or something over here and just letting it kind of venture out because there's loads of room here. Like if I were to guess, I would say the depth of this bed here 7, 8 feet. Um, yeah, and it's probably like that there as well. I do plan on getting some creek rock to do a good border here also. I plan on planting just marigolds in all my pots next year because they have so many benefits, and I really loved the marigold varieties I had that I'm not even going to try with the petunias next year that had petunias in it. I seem to kill those all the time. Marigolds it is. So, what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to build up the stone around this perimeter. I want to try and get some creek stone. So I'm going to actually get creek stone, build up this perimeter. This has mulch here now. So I want to talk a little bit about what I did with this. This has mulch now and about 1,000 leaves, but this was very grassy. I had to kill off the grass, but I want to talk about how I did it, which is actually what I'm going to do for my blueberry section back there, is I saved my Amazon boxes. I saved my Amazon boxes and just covered the whole area, put some rocks on top of them to hold them down, and the Amazon boxes really killed off all the grass that was underneath. The more stubborn plants like daffodils, tulips, things of that nature still popped up through the boxes, but the grass did not. After I did that with the Amazon boxes, I eventually, after I was like confident that they were going to kill things well, I then threw the mulch right over the Amazon boxes. Okay. So the soil underneath the Amazon boxes is very compact, very hard, and it's not been great to try and plant things in it. I had tried to throw a couple of different flowers up here, and they just really did not take. I've put some hostas in here too, because hostas are edible. But the hostas, they're doing all right, but I would like for the soil to be healthier for them. So what I intend to do is build up all of my stones here in a way that it'll have a true wall. And then as I have a bit of a true wall, I'm not talking huge, just enough of a barrier to where it doesn't all spill out. Then I'm going to place compost here as well. I've never been a big mulcher. I don't mulch in my garden either. I'll place mulch here kind of periodically, but I'm just going to mix this mulch right in with my compost in the spring. Then I will have good soil here that's pretty comparable to the soil in my garden beds. And then whenever I have things built like that, I'll be able to grow things like squashes, pumpkins. I was thinking about putting peas, maybe throwing a trellis in here. To be determined. But I plan on spreading out a bit and being able to put vegetables or other things that are a little bit more shade tolerant actually under this big tree. So we have wrapped up the 2025 year in this garden, and really the first true year of me growing in the way that I'd always dreamed. So it's only going to grow from here, and I'm going to just continue expanding, which is super exciting. So I probably will not do a garden tour for December, just because there's not going to be much going on. I do plan to, depression can't really hit a moving target. So I have a lot of in-the-house projects that I'm going to be working on over the winter. So I'll still be making videos here and there, but they'll be of a little bit of a different variety. This is me wrapping up my garden for 2025. If you want to see some other videos, maybe if you want to see August when it was in all of its glory, or if you want to see this video here I've added because I was harvesting some herbs, so I'm going to add a video here as well for the herb things that I do with all of the herbs that I harvest, how I dry them, how I take care of them. So this will be my last garden video, I'd say, for 2025. But it has been so rewarding. I've grown so many things that I've never grown before, and I'm sure that'll continue. I've learned a lot, as you always do as a gardener, so this has been really fun. I've really enjoyed my videos. I've really enjoyed the folks that have been coming back to every video and giving me suggestions and encouragement. This has very much been a blast for me. So it's everything I've ever dreamed. So wrapping up 2025, and I'm excited for spring.